Coming up on this edition of Maximus Aviation's Newsweek in Review. Last month, Boeing announced yet another defect found on the 787 that led to Boeing's firing of an Italian parts supplier. Well, now the Italian government has opened a criminal investigation into that parts supplier over their defective 787 parts. I'll tell you about it. Speaking of Boeing, this week they settled yet another lawsuit stemming from the 737 MAX disasters. But this time it was Boeing's own investors that were suing them. I've got the details of how much Boeing's going to have to pay their stockholders. And finally, have you ever thought to yourself, I wish I could get my hands on my very own A380 jumbo jet? Well, now is your chance. Of course, you can't actually get your own A380, but you can buy a piece of one. Literally. I'll tell you how. All that and more is coming up on this edition of Maximus Aviation's Newsweek in Review. Greetings everybody, Maximus here. Welcome back to another edition of the Week in Review. Prosecutors in Italy have opened an investigation into the Italian Boeing parts supplier MPS, a metal alloy manufacturer who may be responsible for the latest defects found in Boeing 787's Dreamliner program. The purpose of the investigation is to verify if the titanium components were indeed flawed and if they pose potential safety risks, a prospect which has been denied by both Boeing and MPS's lawyers. This is the second probe involving Italian-based MPS, which is already under investigation into the bankruptcy of a predecessor company. Last month, Boeing announced that some titanium 787 Dreamliner parts provided by MPS through the Italian group Leonardo had been improperly manufactured over the past 3 years. But Boeing maintains that the issue does not affect the immediate safety of flights. MPS's role until recently was to provide small titanium parts and to smooth and chemically coat the components to make them corrosion resistant. The company, now temporarily shut down, which employs less than 40 workers, has also been a supplier to several other aerospace companies as well. Prosecutors are trying to determine why the issue with MPS components was only recently made public. Francesca Conti, a lawyer for MPS and its owner, Italian entrepreneur Antonio Ingrosso, denied any safety issue. Conti said these are non-sensitive parts as far as aircraft safety is concerned and have been widely controlled by MPS's clients. We will demonstrate at the appropriate time that these charges against MPS are unfounded, she said. Leonardo's general manager, Valerio Cioffi, said Boeing and Leonardo are victims of potential misbehavior by MPS, and we are cooperating fully with authorities. Last month, Leonardo said that it was an injured party and would not bear any potential costs associated with the issue, adding that MPS was no longer supplying the parts. Boeing dropped MPS from its sub-suppliers list after discovering the defects. This latest investigation comes as Italian prosecutors near completion of an earlier probe into the bankruptcy of MPS's predecessor company, Processi Speciali. It's also alleged that the company rented its assets to MPS before going bankrupt in 2018. MPS eventually acquired all of Processi Speciali's assets as a result of the bankruptcy. In May, MPS owner Ingrosso was placed under house arrest as part of the bankruptcy probe. Ingrosso, who has since been released, did not respond directly to a request for comment. Documents released on Friday, November 4th, show that current and former Boeing board members have reached a $237.5 million proposed settlement with shareholders to settle a lawsuit over the board's safety oversight of the 737 MAX program. One of the highlights of the proposed agreement is that it requires the election of an additional board director within 1 year who must have aviation, aerospace, engineering, or product safety oversight expertise. New York State Comptroller Thomas P. DiNapoli and the Fire and Police Pension Association of Colorado, the lead plaintiffs, said the settlement, if approved, will be the largest monetary recovery in a lawsuit filed in the Delaware courts over allegations that directors failed to protect against the risk of harm. DiNapoli said Boeing's board failed in their fiduciary responsibility to monitor safety and protect the company, its shareholders, and its customers from unsafe business practices. On top of that, Boeing's board already admitted to illegal conduct. It is our hope moving forward that the reforms agreed to in this settlement will help safeguard Boeing and the flying public against any future tragedy and begin to restore the company's reputation. The agreement also calls for Boeing's board to always be required to have at least 3 directors with safety-related experience. Under the settlement, Boeing would amend its bylaws to require the separation of the CEO and board chair position and create an ombudsman program to provide Boeing employees conducting airplane certification work for the FAA with a way to raise work-related concerns. The settlement would also require Boeing to provide annual public reports on safety-related enhancements implemented by Boeing since the MAX Air disasters. The order states that the financial penalty is to be paid by insurers to Boeing, minus the $30 million in legal fees and expenses to the shareholders' attorneys. Boeing's current and former directors don't admit wrongdoing and assert they were acting in the best interest of the company and its stockholders. The Delaware court in September ruled Boeing stockholders could pursue some claims against the board, saying the first 737 MAX crash was a red flag about the safety system known as MCAS that the board should have heeded, but instead ignored. The crashes have already cost Boeing over $20 billion. Boeing also agreed to a deferred prosecution agreement with the U.S. Justice Department in January, including $2.5 billion in fines, including compensation for the victims of the MAX crashes. Boeing's board recently added retired Lieutenant General Stacey Harris, who has over 10,000 hours experience as a pilot of Boeing aircraft, and David Joyce, who led GE Aviation from 2009 to 2020. And finally, Emirates has announced plans to upcycle and recycle most of its first retired A380 Super Jumbo. Aircraft registration A6 EDA was the first A380 to be delivered to Emirates in 2008. Over its lifetime, it made a total of 6,319 flights with stops at 62 airports. Its first commercial service was between Dubai and New York JFK on August 1, 2008, and its last commercial flight was from Singapore back to Dubai on March 8 of 2020. After removing components that the airline can use on other aircraft such as landing gear, cockpit computers, and displays, the Super Jumbo was handed over to Falcon Aircraft Recycling, which will design and manufacture a series of unique collectibles and retail items from the materials and parts removed from the aircraft. Items including Emirates' first A380 onboard bar will be transformed into coffee tables and other assorted furniture, as well as a range of aviation memorabilia and retail items that will be released for sale in the coming months. A portion of the profits from the sale of upcycled and recycled items will go to support the Emirates Airline Foundation. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Week in Review. Now it's your chance to let me know what you think about these stories down below. And if you enjoy the channel and you'd like to help support us in the work we do, you can check out our merchandise links down below or the Buy Me a Coffee app. So until next time, on your way out, please be sure to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. And remember, leave the rubber on the runway and your troubles on the ground. And I will see you next time in the air. Yeah, this is Maximus.